Hi everybody, it's Mary, and today, well, it's been quite a day in upstate New York. We've had anywhere between, depending on where you are, 2 feet to 4 feet of snow. It's been a pretty day, as long as you could stay inside, but it's a lot of snow. So I'm here though to show you the assembly instructions for the Jingle Joy card making and mini album Gnome workshop that you had signed up to do and had received a kit from me in the mail. So I'm going to separate this video into two separate sessions. I'm going to start with the cards, and then I'll come back with a separate video to do the actual mini album. So when you got the kit, you got everything you needed to put these cards together except for adhesive. And you also might need to have a pair of scissors nearby just in case there's some minor trimming that you need to do. We're going to do a lot of work with the stickles on the cards and on the gnomes in the mini album. So I'll go through that. And then we're also going to be I'm going to be demonstrating with the Spectrum Tri-Blend Spectrum Noir markers. And so I've already gone through and pulled the colors that I thought matched best with the colors in this paper collection. And so these are the ones that I'm going to use, but certainly you can use whatever coloring tools you have available. It does not need to be these markers, can be colored pencils, can be markers, can be whatever, crayons, whatever you'd like to use to do the coloring for the gnomes. But this is what I'm going to be using in terms of the demonstration. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to move the mini album to the side, and I'm going to leave the stickers out because we're probably going to need those. So I'm actually going to start with these two cards first because I think these are probably the easiest ones to get started with. And so the first one that we'll do is the Here Comes Santa Claus. And in your kit, on the upper right hand corner of the envelope, you'll see a light pencil mark on all of the cards that you received. And this one will say Santa on it. So when you take everything out of the envelope, not so much for this card, but for cards where there's going to be more pieces associated with them, you want to be careful so that you keep everything together. So this one though really has, let me move the markers back a little bit because we're not going to use those yet on this card. This one basically has a black photo mat, and it's been trimmed to leave about 1/8 of an inch all the way around the white base, and a Santa Claus card that also is going to leave about the same amount when you put that down on the black. Then I did quite a bit of the stickling on the Santa Claus's hat and beard and on his belt. So let me just go ahead first and do this assembly. So you're going to notice the cards are all double-sided, and these are called Picture My Life cards. Generally, there's a horizontal and a vertical version when you buy the set from Close to My Heart. I'm going to use the vertical orientation on this card, and it's just about 1/8 of an inch all the way around on the black. And then I'm going to just use my tape sparingly, but enough to make sure that the card will stick to the card base. And I know most of you are very experienced card makers, so I'm not going to spend too much time on that. But you don't need to cover the complete back of the cardstock with any kind of adhesive. It's going to stick just fine just by even doing the corners, if that's really all that you want to do on there. A liquid glue would also work, but I'm going to be using tape for today. So I'm going to get that base is done. And then to use the stickles, if you want to apply the sparkle to this, which you have a whole container, so you won't run out if you decide this is what you want to do. What I did first, this is a brand new container. You want to make sure you squeeze it slightly so that you see a little bit of the sparkle in the neck here of your tube. It's starting to come through. You don't want to push too hard on there because you'll end up with a big puddle of stickles on your piece. But you want to go very lightly. I'm going to do a little on the mat, and then I'll lift it up so you can see it a little bit closer. But basically, I'm just going across where the hat line would be. And you'll notice you don't have any sides to work with because it's white on white. But if you just round it to fit his face, it's going to be fine. And then I did a little bit on here. And then I did around his mustache. I mean, you can fill the whole thing in if you'd like. But I just wanted a little bit more shimmer on this card. So I went around his mustache. And then I went kind of on this curly section of his beard, just to give those little, they're semicircles, I guess. And then I did outline the edge of his beard with the stickles. And I'm going to pull this up closely here so you can see it a little bit better. But this is the area that I did the clear or the white Stickles diamond color on this card. So hopefully the light is going to catch this well enough so you can see the sparkle. If you can do whatever you want on here. That was just kind of my interpretation of where I wanted it to sparkle. And actually, now that I'm looking at this, I'm going to do a little bit of sparkle right on his sleeves right here too, because I think that would probably be fur. And I'm probably going to put it right down here too, which I didn't notice when I did the sample card, but that I think is also fur on Santa. If you have silver stickles and you want to put it on the belt of the Santa, you can. I'm going to, but it's the same exact process. Very, very light touch, so you don't get too big of a puddle on his belt. And so the silver's done. Let me just show you that one close up. So I think you can see the sparkle. That's all I did on this card. That's what the beauty of these Picture My Life cards is. You can get a very easy end result by doing just a little bit of trimming of the 4x6 card, putting a background color to set it off, and then adding some sort of embellishment like I did on this one with the stickles. So for this card, the stickles are going to take a while to dry. I'm going to set this off to the side, and I'm sure, I don't know if it'll even be dry enough by the end of our class. As you're home and working on this, just make sure you're putting the card in an area that you're not going to touch it with any of the work that you'll be doing. So I'm actually going to step away, and I put it in a completely different area in my workroom. So it's not anywhere near the other cards that I'm working on. The next card that we're going to do is the stockings. Now, you also in your kit should have received a package that has a number of stickers that have been cut already for you off of the sticker page that comes with the Jingle Joy paper pack. And I've already cut them and put them in your package so they're ready for you to use to assemble these cards. So for this card, which says stocking or stockings in the upper right hand corner, in your kit, let me open it up and I'll just be careful again. In this one, you've received a black piece of cardstock for the base, just like what we used on the Santa one. And then the Picture My Life card has been trimmed so that you've got about 1/8 of an inch all the way around the edge. So I'm going to go ahead and assemble that first. And notice I'm just using the tape runner in the corners and maybe a little bit along the long edge. You can put some in the middle if you'd like. Just don't feel like you need to overdo it with your tape runner. Okay, so this is pretty much centered with the 1/8 of an inch all the way around the edge. make sure your card is opening to the right. I've done that many times and ended up with an upside down card. So just test that before you actually adhere the top of your card to the base. So I'm going to go ahead and do the tape runner on the black cardstock. And set that one down. It's just about 1/8 of an inch. Really, if you center it on the card base, you're going to end up with it being spaced pretty well just because of the way that it's been cut. Now, the beauty of this card, what I noticed when I looked at the sticker sheet is that there were actual stockings that were stickers that matched the stockings on the Picture My Life card. So I decided to add those just to give this some dimension, and then I did the stickles on here last. But if I think I can turn this, hopefully, you can see that the stocking is popped up just slightly. I used the same stocking that was printed on the card and used the thin 3D foam dots to raise them up just a little bit to give the card some dimension. So I'm going to pull those stockings. So if you could go to your sticker pack and find, just spread those out on a paper plate or something, and find the 3 stockings that would go on this card, you'll be able to follow along. So I'm going to grab those, and the first one I'm going to get is going to be the gray one. So I'm going to start with the left, doesn't really matter. And I'm going to use my foam dots to put that stocking on top of the PML card. Now, there are actually large and a smaller size foam dot in this package, and the tip of the stocking is actually a little bit narrower. So I'm just going to use the smaller foam dot there, and then take the backing off. And you can carefully line that up with the stocking that's already on the card and just place it on top of the printed stocking. So now I've got the gray stocking popped up on top of the gray stocking. And we're going to do the same exact process for the next 2 stockings. So I've got the pink one next. I'm going to put a couple of the foam dots, one at top, one in the middle, and then a smaller one again at the bottom. And put that one down on the pink. Okay. And then the last one is the striped one. And then I'll show you how I did the stickles. Now, certainly you can do them however you'd like, and you don't have to do them at all. But I kind of like, I wanted some sparkle on here. I love glitter on holiday cards. So let me get this smaller one on here. Take the backing off. Apply this to the base so it's covering. And you'll notice it does cover that middle stocking just a little bit, the way that it's hanging on the actual cord that the stockings are hung on. Now I've got a silver and the diamond stickles. You don't have to use silver, but I did just kind of on the little tips where the stockings were hung. But what I did, this was all just free-handed, and they're little swirls. Now remember, light touch. So I put one kind of coming off the stocking over here, and just did a little swirl. And then I did another one up here. And this is just to, when it dries, then this one went backwards. It just gives it a little bit more sparkle, and it gives, I thought, the stockings kind of an impression of sort of movement on the stockings. And then I did a last one down here, so it kind of came around and filled this space where it said the stockings were hung by the chimney with care. You know, there's all kinds of things you could do with the stickles if you want. If you don't have to use them, you could put stickles on the stockings. You could just do some background stars or dots with the stickles. That's how I chose to do them on this card. And then I did put a little dot of the silver on the top of the stockings where kind of they were hung on the cord. And that one is another pretty simple card. I wanted to show you how easy it is, again, to take a picture of my life card and turn it into something that's simple and ends up with a really pretty result. The Picture My Life cards come in a set. We're going to use quite a few of them actually in the mini album, but you get both the 4x6 and 3x4, and I think there's either 10 or 12. I think there's 10 of each size. So I think you get 20 in a set, and I'll confirm that because I'm going to open up the catalog and show you. But they're really fun to work with. And so here's the stocking card. I'm going to move that one out of the way. Would ask you to do the same so that you don't get any stickles on any of your other work. Okay, we have 2 more cards to do. And these are actually going to require coloring with whatever medium that you're going to use to add the color. Now, do you have to color? No, you don't. I mean, you can leave these plain. You've got everything you need to complete the card. You could send it with just black and white images, and you could tell the person that you're sending it to that it's a coloring opportunity for them, which is kind of a fun idea too. So I'm going to start with this card right here with the reindeer and the 2 snowmen. I think in the upper right-hand corner it says scene. The other one said gnome, but you'll know when you open it whether you have the right one just because of the background paper with the trees. So the thought on this one was I wanted to try to make it look like a scene, and in my mind, the 2 snowmen were out there kind of having fun in the snow, which is fitting for today. And the reindeer had spotted them and kind of was coming over, and these are his footprints in the snow to say hello. So that's kind of what I was thinking. So in this one, make sure you're opening at the bottom on this base. And in your kit, you should have 3 stamped images. You should have a reindeer and 2 snowmen, and they've already been stamped, and I'm going to talk about the stamping in a second. And then you should have a piece of green cardstock, a cardstock with a tree, and on the back, it's like a black and white plaid, I think. And so you could use the other side, but I wanted, like I said, I wanted this to look like a scene as if there were trees in the background. So that's why I chose this side. And then you should have a die cut piece of white cardstock that's got a little stitched edge. And that's what I intended to kind of be the snow or the snowbank the hills that they were walking through. So I'm going to take this, and I'm first going to adhere the tree cardstock to the green base. Now, the solid cardstock that Close to My Heart sells always has 2 different shades on each colored piece of cardstock. There's going to be a darker shade and a lighter shade. You can choose which one you want to use on your card. I'm pretty sure I use the dark one, but it's a personal preference. So either one will work because everything's color coordinated, and there's light and dark trees anyway in this paper. So just use whichever one you prefer. And then you can go ahead and tape your snow hill down. Now yours, they might not all look exactly the same just because of how they were die cut, but you should have something that looks like it's a rolling hill, and the hill itself might be steeper on one side than the other, and your piece might be a little bit bigger than this one or a little bit smaller. You can trim it however you'd like. I'm going to use this one as it is. And I'm gonna just make sure that I've got enough tape on the edges so that it's gonna stick well on the edges and along the bottom. You'll notice on the sample, when I placed the reindeer in there, his back leg is kind of coming up over the hill. I didn't want him just kind of floating on top of the hill. So just make sure that, and I have a little bit right there where I know I can slip it in. Make sure that you leave a little spot with your adhesive on the left-hand side so that the reindeer leg can go in there later. Now, these were stamped because we're going to be, I'm using markers. And so when you are stamping and you know you're going to color with markers, you want to use an ink that's a permanent ink, not a water-based ink. Because if you use a water-based ink and then you lay in the markers, they're going to bleed. The black or whatever color you stamped in is going to bleed into the marker color, and you're going to end up with kind of a mixture of the stamped color and the marker color. So I like to use the intense black ink because it is a solvent-based permanent ink. There are other permanent inks that you could use that would work. I've tested them all. This is the one for me that I like the best. So I'm going to show you two different ways to use these markers. So first, let me explain how the markers work. So this first one that I'm using to color the deer, I chose a very light brown color just because I wanted to keep the colors in the palette kind of light. And so I chose, this is called Fair Skin Blend. So it's FS6, FS7, FS8. This is what it will look like when it's colored in. So in the tri-blend markers, there's always a light, medium, and dark. So there's actually 3 different shades that are included in each marker. And so you have the ability to shade or not to shade when you're using these, and it's really up to you what you prefer to do. When I colored in the reindeer, I'm pretty sure that I started with the light color. So what I did was I went in and I actually laid in the light color. I'm kind of using like very circular, roundish strokes. I laid in the lightest color all the way on the whole reindeer except the reindeer scarf and his nose, because, well, I kind of wanted him to look like Rudolph, I guess, so I gave him a pretty red nose. So I laid in the light. Now, there are actually some white spots in here too, and that's okay. So I started with the very light color. Then, if you want to shade, I'm going to show you how to shade. If you don't want to shade, what I know a lot of people do is they just take the next color. So if you started with light, go to the medium. If you started with the medium, go to the dark. And all they do then is they outline the edges of their stamped image to give it a little bit darker look all the way around the edge. So that is a way you can kind of get an illusion of the shading, and that works fine. And that's how I'm going to do the deer. I'm going to actually show you some different techniques for shading when we get into the gnomes. So I laid in the medium color, and then I kind of still have a little bit of area there where I don't care for how it's blended. So I go back to what I started with, and I pull from the area that I just colored with the darker color into the lighter color. And it's a very subtle shading on this one, and I actually, you can tell, mine is quite a bit darker because I started with the medium and then went to the dark. So I mean, I'm going to add in a little bit of dark just to, and I'm just going around the edges again. this doesn't need much shading on here because it's really a very whimsical, this is not intended to be realism in any way. So there's my deer. Now you can choose what color you want for the scarf. I'm going to use the light green blend, and I'm going to start with the lightest green and just color in his scarf right here. And then because the way the scarf is folded over, these areas where it's tied, I feel like are kind of underneath the scarf. And then this edge over here, I think would be darker. So I just went in and laid in a little bit of the medium color just to give it a little shading. You can just make a solid color and you don't have to shade at all. Then I took I think because it's red, I used the dark red blend, and I just did a little tiny bit on the nose because I wanted him to be Rudolph. Okay, so now the reindeer's done. Now on the snowmen, I'm going to put the reindeer in the finished card. So I'm just going to use my tape runner. And I'm sticking his back leg a little bit behind that snow. So he's just slightly on top of that hill and then adhering him down. Now the snowmen I'll show you how I have them on here. I have the taller one kind of a little bit up on top of, as if it's a little bit further behind this small one. And they are overlapping some. I'm not going to tape them down yet because the way that I did the snowmen, you'll see, I did a lot of the clear stickles because I wanted it to look like a very glistening snow. I hope the light's catching that. So I first went in and did my coloring, and I used a similar green, but it's more of a blue green, and that's this one. So this is called green turquoise, and I colored in his scarf. So I think I started with the lighter color or the medium, doesn't matter, as long as the next color that you use for the shading is the next one up. And so I'm just going to do a little bit under his neck and under where the scarf would be laying on top of the tie. And on the girl, she looked like a girl to me, I used a pink color. And so back to my palette, there's two different pinks that I pulled out of here. Because of the color of the trees, I'm going to use this magenta blend. You could also use pale pink shades if you have the markers, but I'm going to use the magenta. And I didn't shade. Instead, what I did was I chose two different levels of this color and did the hat a little bit lighter. So I'm going to start with the light color for the hat. And then I did the area, the ruffle in a darker. So I just went up one step. So I went to the medium color. I think it might be the dark one, but I can go in and fix it. No, it's definitely the medium one. And I colored in her ruffle. And I also colored in the scarf with the medium color. And then I shaded in the darkest color on the scarf. And so that would be here. And notice the numbers go up. The lower the number, the lighter the shade. So this is PP for pale pink, 4, PP5, PP6. So I'm going to use 6 now and just do a little bit of shading underneath and on the side of the scarf, underneath her chin. And then you could put these down, but what I would recommend instead, you can put them down, but when you apply the stickles, this one is on top. You know what? I think it'll be okay. I'm going to go ahead and tape these right onto the card. just so that we can get this one complete. And you'll notice it's probably about a little over a ½ an inch from the side and maybe 3/4 of an inch up is how I did it. I think because this hill is a little higher, I'm going to raise it up a little. And then I did overlap this. You can pop it up if you want to. For purposes of this, I'm not going to, but I just popped this up a little here. Then you've got your stickles. So this is why the kits included this this bottle of the diamond stickles, because I loved how it looked on both the gnomes and the snowmen. So I'm shaking it to get it down into the neck. And again, very lightly. You don't even have to fill it, really. You just have to get enough on there so that it glistens. So I'm just going to go around this edge where I had already glued this down and up under the scarf. I'm going to try to get this closer for you. Let's see if I can do it. And same here. I noticed I missed a little under here. And I'm just doing circular motions, but it's how it, just because the shape of the snowman would be round. So there. Don't squeeze your stickles very hard. If you get a large puddle, I usually take just a small piece of scrap cardstock and kind of carefully scrape it off. And then you might even be able to reuse it. Now the last thing I did, the stamp set that I used for this card is this one right here. It's called the Jubilee Crew. It is still available till the end of December, Z3901. But see these little dots right here? I did, if you have this stamp set, I stamped on the dots on mine. I didn't do it on your kit because I wasn't exactly sure how you were going to place the reindeer. And so I thought it would be better if you want the footsteps, you can just draw some dots in with a small black marker or a pencil, you know, a colored pencil, something, and you don't have to do it at all. You could, another option is to use some stickles. You know what, I'm going to do that right now and make it look like this deer had stepped into the snow and it's kind of glistening. So that's just another option. So I just did some little squigglies there. And I'm going to put some underneath the snowmen now that I've done that too. Just let me pull this over. Just to give some more dimension to where they are. So all I did was lightly, not a solid line, just kind of drag this back and forth, and I made it look like the snow had been interrupted by the reindeer and the snowmen. This needs to dry, and I realize I have not taped it to the card base. So I'm going to just put this to the side, let it dry, and then come back and do the attach the green base to the actual card base. And then that's that card. You can put whatever sentiment that you want on the inside, or you can leave it blank and just write a note. Lots of times another method I use is to type a note on a separate piece of paper or handwrite it, sign it, and that's my message to the recipient of the card. But then they can use the card again and pass it on to someone else and write their own note on the inside. So it kind of gets two uses out of one card. And so that's just a fun little tip. So I'm going to move this one to the side. The last card that we're going to do is, it says Gnome on your actual envelope in the upper right hand corner. And this is a completely different stamp set. It is also still available through the end of December, but I'm sure you've noticed the how many gnomes have been out in the stores and online to celebrate Christmas. I think there were actually gnomes for Halloween. I've seen Thanksgiving gnomes. Gnomes seem to be a big a big item this year. So I used this stamp set more in the mini album, but I did do one card with the gnome. And this one, I actually saw this idea from a woman by the name of Sandy Zimmer, and she's also a close to my heart maker. And she actually used the thin cut to cut through the base of the front of the card and then attached the gnome on the inside of the card. So I thought, you know, that's kind of a cute idea. I want to try that using my own design with the papers and the colors and see how I can make that work. So when you got your kit, I already had taped down the raspberry and the black plaid cardstock because I had to do that so I could cut out through the 3 layers the actual window for the gnome. So you've already got this part done if you got a kit. So really all you need to do then is take your gnome. So let me get that out. So this is what it looked like when you got your kit. And be careful because of the hole in the front. The components that you need were loose inside. And I just noticed this one doesn't have the Merry Christmas stamped, but I know yours does. I'm positive it does. So what you want to do is first, I'm just going to do a little bit of coloring. So the gift, and you can choose your colors, but I used the, I think I used this green turquoise blend because there's no other color on here, and I thought that would go better with the raspberry than just the green. Personal preference. And I made the gift ribbon, and you could actually do more than that. You can color the gift if you want, where there are these white stripes to give it that same greenish tone. So I know I've done that on some. You can color the bow, or on mine, I use the stickles on the bow. Do you see a theme here? Do you think I like glitter? I know a couple of you that are on here know that I love glitter. So I'm going to stick the present on the lower left-hand corner. And I'm going to do the glitter, the stickles last so that we can set it aside to dry. In the meantime, put your adhesive on the back of your gnome. Okay? And then take your gnome, hold the base, kind of like the front of the card. Hold that gnome in place, or actually you could shut your card. Let's do it. That probably is easier. And it's like a puzzle, but you're going to have to get under that gift now. Place the gnome inside the die cut area. And if it all stick, you're going to know when you try to open it, but you can jiggle it. And now the gnome is exactly where it needs to be, so it pops through when you look at the card, and your gift is over here. On the inside, you have the word Merry Christmas. You can put it in as I gave it to you. I didn't want to stamp it directly on the card because I wasn't sure if that's what you were going to want to use, but I did cut around it. Again, you don't have to. You can put it somewhere else on the card. You can put it on the front if you'd like. That's just where I chose to do it because I thought it was kind of a surprise. There's the tree, the gnome decorating the tree, and the Merry Christmas. So I'm going to put the tree on the inside, and now if this was a single layer, while I'm taping this on, I just want to tell you about these markers. On the white cardstock, it will bleed through. So if this was a single layer of a card and I wasn't coloring on the tree and the gnome as a separate piece of cardstock, it would bleed through and it would end up on the back of your card. I don't believe it'll bleed through the 2 layers, but I'm gonna show you right now. So the gnome, this one I am gonna show you a little bit more about the coloring, and I'll use the tree as the example. So tri-blend marker, 3 shades going from light to dark. When you shade, you're always going to start with either leaving white space in your whatever you're coloring, or start with the lightest color. And then, so you go from light to dark to medium to light when you shade. This isn't a huge area to color in, so I might just use the light and the medium, but I want to show you how the darkest color comes into play. So I'm going to leave that here in the frame. Let's do this. Okay. So I'm going to start with the lightest color on the tree, and I'm coloring around those circles. Here. Just very lightly. It's a really light touch with these markers. They go on so, they're just so smooth. And Spectrum Noir has made it really easy to shade because they've lined up in one marker what you need to do your shading. Just different tones of the same color, so you can get that shaded effect. And then I'm going to color in, and I'm kind of following as if that was a rounded part of the tree. So I've got the light color laid into the whole thing. I'm going to want a little bit of dark. I decided to put it kind of like right under the star, and then right under here where the top of the tree is kind of overlaying and creating a shadow to the bottom part of the tree. So very light touch, very, very light, and just lay in a little bit here. Okay, very light, not a lot, just enough to get some shading. Then I went to my medium color, and I pulled into that darker color, kind of back and forth, down into the tree from the top. I didn't go all the way down. If I did, then the whole tree is going to end up darker. And I did the same thing here, and you can kind of see as you're pulling it in, this is blending. And there's going to be a final step, which is going to make it blend even more. I just kind of went maybe, I don't know, about halfway down. I didn't do the whole thing. And then I went side to side on this part of the tree with the medium, just underneath where this line is, okay? Then the final step is to go back in with the light color again, because as you can see, let me pull that off, it's too stark of a contrast. You want it blended, and you want the lightest part to not have you want it to be more graduated and not a definite line between your 2 shades. So the way you do that is to go back into the light and pull it up into that medium color. Now, I'm not even going to color all of the light. You can, but just enough so you're pulling that medium color into your light. So I left part of it still light. Same here on the bottom. It's hard, because I'm not on a flat surface. It looks really dark right now, but as it dries, what you're going to see is a very gradual shading difference. Now, if you want a little bit more dark, you can go back in and add a little bit more of that, but I don't want to spend a lot more time on this tree. But I wanted to show you the technique. Light, dark, medium, light to do the shading, okay? And on the base of the tree, I'm pretty sure I used the peach, or coral, I'm sorry, coral blend. I know, it's not brown. This is Whimsical. If you want to use brown, go ahead and use brown. But I kind of wanted to kind of match it up with the gnome, and I knew that I was going to be using the light, the fair skin blend, and the coral to kind of get a little bit of extra blushing color on his nose. So I started with the light, and I did do a little bit of a darker shade, and I'm just going to use medium. I went under there and then just kind of down to the side and just pulled it over a little. Now I am going to go back in with the light just because that's kind of the technique that I was sharing, but just very lightly. And it does look like a little bit of a shaded brick stump on the tree. Then you can go ahead and decorate this however you want, whatever colors you want. I did do a little bit of stickling on the star, so that's that. Now on the gnome, I am going to show you just a different way to color. Now on mine, I did kind of use that greenish color, but for this card, I'm going to switch it, and I'm going to use the pink. So I'm going to use the magenta blend again. And so these are the light to dark shades, what it's going to look like. So on this one, I'm going to start with the lightest. And this one, I'm just going to do the outlining effect that I've seen quite a few people do instead of actual shading with the light, medium, and dark. So I'm just going to color in this whole hat. And let me move a little faster on here. But I'm just coloring in the whole hat. Trying to be careful not to get this into those circles, but you can. Just trying to be careful around those. And so what I've seen people do, and this is whimsical, it's not meant to be realistic. Go to the next color up. This is medium, and I can also show it to you with dark. So now I'm using the medium, and I'm just kind of going around where this is stamped. So around the edges, around the circles, and I know I'm going fast. I'm sure you're doing a way better job. Around this circle, just outline that, outline around here, come down, outline around the bottom. I think I missed this circle. I might have missed this circle, and I missed this circle, and it's not by any means is that great coloring, but you can see how that actually, you end up with what appears to be a shaded hat. So that's just another way to do that. Then on this guy, I did the nose very similar to how I did the tree trunk. And I used the coral blend. I started with the lightest color, and I definitely did this in a circular motion because his nose is like a puffy circular nose. And then I took the medium and I didn't do the top. I just kind of did around one side, kind of like a C. And if you want, you can go back in with the light and just kind of pull that in to shade it a little bit more. I'm not going to go in and color the lights on here. I know you can do that. The last thing that I did on this one, though, is the stickling. And I did do some stickling on his hat right here, the star, and I did the present on the front, just, the top of the bow. So if you want to do that, mine is not adhered very well. You can pull that off so that you can do all the stickling at one time and then put your gift back on. And then put your sentiment wherever you would like to put it. And so that's that card. I think it's so cute. I love this concept. And you can do this with any thin cut. And experiment if you have them, because it really is a lot of fun to do. Okay, I'm going to stop this video, put this to the side. I'm going to go add my stickles. And then I'll start another video for the assembly of this stacked mini album. And that one, as soon as I get this one ready for you to watch, then this one will be right after it. And I think it'll take, this right now, this video is about 45 minutes long. I think the book decorating, because I've already constructed the book for you, all you're doing is decorating and coloring. I think The decorating is probably going to take no more than an hour. You can decide how much time you want to spend on the coloring, but the decorating itself should not take much more than an hour. So I'll be back soon. Thank you.